I'm recording this video in my hotel room in Istanbul the day after Man City have just won the treble. We've won the Champions League. We are actually champions of Europe now. Still hasn't properly processed. It's such a bizarre feeling. But yeah, in this video, I just want to give my thoughts on the match itself and the legacy of this side. I did not enjoy watching that game for one moment. I thought City deserved to win. I did think we were the better side, but it was not the best City performance at all. Lots of individuals didn't have their best games. I think of like Haaland, Grealish, Gundogan, Akanji at times, not really having games that we used to seeing them play. But on the other hand, Bernardo Silva was excellent. Ruben Diaz and John Stones were, in my opinion, our two best players. Ruben Diaz was one of the most impressive performances I've seen from him. His ability to prevent a chance from even formulating, it was sensational. And John Stones, he was asked to play in this more sort of, we used to seeing him play like the central midfield role, like, you know, alongside Rodri or whatever, but he was actually pushed higher up yesterday, which was really odd to see. And he said it himself in the interviews, he played more like an 8. And who would have thought that Stones would be able to play as a defensive midfielder, never mind as a more progressive 8? Like, I'm not exaggerating. At times yesterday, he genuinely looked like, you know, a combination like Busquets and Xavi. It was such an impressive performance, and the Inter players had to keep fouling him because they knew that he was our biggest threat. It was just absolutely fantastic. Yeah, so I thought he and Diaz were our best players. Rodri just kept giving the ball away. I know he scored the goal, obviously, but he kept giving the ball away uncharacteristically as well. Incredibly odd from him. And we opted to play Stones at right back, out of possession. I just talked about how fantastic Stones was from like that number 8 role. And he was solid defensively as well, but Inter with their 3-5-2, they were clearly focusing more on the width. They clearly decided that they weren't going to try to win the midfield battle when they had the ball. So what they did instead was, so DeMarco was their best player, I thought, so I'll use this as an example. DeMarco would pick up the ball, Stones was tasked with triggering the press there and going tight to him. But what all DeMarco would do, would he just like pass it off to someone like Barella or Brozovic, and then he'd just do a 1-2 and DeMarco would just like run right past John Stones. So that was always a threat throughout the night. And I think that Inzaghi probably realised, maybe when the team sheet was announced, that because Kyle Walker wasn't playing, it meant that there was a less mobile fullback on that right side. Having centre halves as your fullbacks is great from a duelling defensive standpoint, but from a mobility standpoint, it's a bit trickier. There's no way DeMarco runs in behind Kyle Walker, for example, so I was a bit surprised he didn't start, but it all worked out in the end. And yes, Stones easily our man of the match. I feel so bad for Kevin De Bruyne, who his second Champions League final has gone off through injury. Again, he wasn't actually playing that well even before he came off. He then he pulled his hamstring or something, and he's been playing with that hamstring injury for like the last 2 months, it seems. So that just puts it into perspective. They scored that insane scream at the Bernabeu with like half a hamstring. So yeah, really disappointed for him that he had to come off. But Foden came on, and I thought he was really good. He should have scored twice, in fairness, but his performance yesterday and towards the latter end of the season, it's almost been like an experiment from Pep. He keeps playing him centrally, almost to like test the waters and be like, right, are you now ready for this role? And I think he's passed that test, definitely. I thought it was fantastic. That little bit of skill he did, that turn, which should have resulted in the goal, was sensational. And he just offered something that Kevin De Bruyne wasn't quite able to offer whilst he was still on the pitch. So that was really promising, and hopefully for the future, Pep keeps playing him in the middle, and I really think that he is not our David Silva replacement. I think he is our Kevin De Bruyne replacement, Phil Foden, and hopefully Southgate sees that and he decides and realises that Foden is good enough to play centrally and be that creative outlet in the middle. So yeah, who else? Who else was good? Ederson, I think, proved most people wrong. There's been this weird, I feel like I've had to do a lot of defending of Ederson this season. He hasn't had his best shot-stopping season, but that's never been his key selling point for Pep. But I tell you what, last night he was sensational. It was at least 2, maybe even 3 outrageous saves right at the end in particular. I actually recorded it because I was like, oh, this will be the moment where hopefully we win the treble. And even then, like City's last touch of the ball is an Ederson wonder save that keeps us, obviously, 1 goal to the good and keeps the clean sheet. That other one, I know you could say, well, it just happened to hit him, but that Lukaku header, which he saved with his leg as well. He was sensational, was Ederson, proving a lot of people wrong, and his distribution's never been in question, but yeah, his shot stopping yesterday was absolutely outrageous. So really happy that he was able to point that brilliant shift. And yeah, just to see him collapse right at the end and just cry, it was brilliant. And just to see all the City players so emotional. And I nearly cried as well, like when the final whistle went. I think if I'd had a bit more to drink, because I'd sobered up by that point. I think the match had sobered me up a bit. But it was very emotional when that final whistle went. Sort of like that feeling of what's actually happened here. Like I can't really figure out what's going on. I've just witnessed with my eyeballs. We've won the Champions League and we've won the treble, and it's just like it's just insane. So yeah, I thought we deserved to win the game. Lots of people will point to Inter having a better XG. A lot of that is warped by game state and the fact that Inter were chasing a goal towards the end. So obviously they're going to commit loads of bodies forwards and have lots of shots. I was a bit surprised that Lukaku didn't start. I thought that Dzeko starting was an odd choice. As far as I understand it, he's been the player to come on for Inter this season, not start. So I don't know if Lukaku wasn't fully fit. I know that Lukaku missed loads of chances and he should have scored and all that stuff, but he did cause Diaz loads of issues yesterday. Diaz couldn't really handle him, to be fair, but thankfully Lukaku's finishing was actually atrocious, so it was all good in the end. And in fact, I think at one point he blocked a certain Inter Milan goal. So thank you for that, Big Rom. Really rate that. Thank you for putting in another stinker when it mattered the most. Any other City players I want to talk about before I talk about Guardiola and legacy? Rodri, as I say, disappointing, but he got the goal. And I tell you what, that goal was very it happened right in front of me as well. It was fantastic. Really reminiscent of Yaya Touré's FA Cup winning goal, just like the way the ball just bounces out and just runs onto it and just calmly slots it in. As soon as he was running onto it, I was like, right, this is a goal, and indeed it was. It was fantastic, and fantastic work. I think it was as much as I had to go at Akanji early because of that really weird back pass to Ederson. Don't know what he was doing. That ball through to Bernardo was a killer ball, and I think maybe that's the reason why Pep wanted to field Akanji at right centre half, because he's on ball play is very good and his range of passing is very good. So maybe that was paying dividends there, I suppose. And yeah, Roger running onto that, fantastic stuff. And obviously we all popped off, and I actually injured my calves celebrating that, because the seats in the arena, they don't go back, and they're made of a really thin plastic. So it meant that when I was jumping up and down, it scraped the back of my calves. So they're bleeding. So you love to see that, you really do. But worth it, obviously. Anyone else that I want to talk about and praise? I've talked about Walker. I've talked about Rodri. Yeah, Grealish disappointing, as I say. But you can't have a great game every single match. That was probably the worst game he's had all season, in fairness. And yeah, Haaland, he probably should have scored as well, but again, he's had a fantastic season, so I'm definitely not going to criticise him. Legacy. Let's talk about this team first, and then we'll talk about Pep. This is now I already thought that Pep City were the greatest Premier League side in history, but this just confirms it from a sort of an external standpoint. There is now no dispute that Pep City is the greatest Premier League side ever. The Centurions and the Formidables already were, in my opinion, but now that they've got that Champions League, and on top of that, it's 3 league titles in a row, and on top of that, it's the treble, something that's only been done previously by Man United, 24 years ago or whatever. It just solidifies them as being the greatest Premier League side ever. I really hope no one actually genuinely wants to debate that. If we're talking about an individual season, I still think that the Centurions and Formidables are better, but if we're talking about the highest point of this side, and by that I mean post loss away against Spurs and post financial breach allegations, so what is that, late February to now, this City side is the best City side I've ever seen. It's just so strong and it's just so stable, but it's still incredibly creative and terrifying and threatening. It's not as beautiful to watch as the Centurions or the Formidables, but it's more effective, and it's obviously we haven't lost a game in the Champions League this season. In the cup competitions especially, the Southampton game aside, because that was just a weird freak, terrible game, we've just been monstrous in the cup competitions. I think that Pep's really tried to set up his sides to be really hard to beat, in addition to being unbelievable to defend against. So yeah, for me, this is the confirm. I already knew it, but this is surely confirmed to any people who didn't think it previously. This is the greatest City side and the greatest Premier League side, ever. The only team you could really put up against it is the United treble winning side. United 08, Arsenal Invincibles, Chelsea 05, Klopp's Liverpool if you really want to. I personally wouldn't, but if you want to. This side is I think it's safe to say clear of those sides. I just remembered one thing about the players. Ruben Diaz, I've got a very tough definition of what I deem world class as. I think Ruben Diaz is now world class. He's been doing it for 3 seasons. I can't really remember him having a bad game ever. He's just a rock. I love that man. Future City captain, definitely. Speaking of captains, Gundogan, please stay. I really hope he signs an extension. I don't think Bernardo will. I think he is gone. I think Laporte too. But if Gundogan could stay, that would be literally the best thing ever. For me, he now gets into the top 5 City legends because he's captain the treble winning side. And yeah, he was just, even though he wasn't great in the game, he's been fantastic this season. And yeah, that's just mad to say that he's captain the treble. Insane. Guardiola now, his legacy. I was already of the opinion that he was the greatest coach in football history. There is a distinction between coach and manager. Because as good as Fergie was as a manager, I don't think he was ever really a fantastic coach. He always had assistants who would do that sort of side of the game. Not saying he was tactically inept or anything, but that's not really why Fergie's considered the greatest manager, because of his coaching. It's because of his man management and ability to work with the team, etc. Stupid people decide that if Pep doesn't win the Champions League with City, then he's not in that conversation. Those people are stupid. In the same way that Messi didn't have to win the World Cup to be proved the greatest player ever, Guardiola did not have to win the Champions League with City in order to prove his greatness as a manager. But now he has done it. So again, for the external people and the idiots who actually did think that he had something to prove, that's now that monkey off his back. And to be fair, I'm sure he's relieved now, because every single season reporters are asking, yeah, but you haven't won the Champions League without Messi, you haven't won the Champions League without Messi, you can't do it without It's well, he has now. And not only that, it's the treble. And he's now the only manager to win 2 trebles, and he's the only manager to have done that at 2 different clubs. He's actually got a chance to win the 2 sextuples now. He was the first manager to win the sextuple. And then Bayern, was it Flick who did it at Bayern? He also won the sextuple. But yes, Pep could win another sextuple if we win the Super Cup, the Club World Cup, and the Community Shield. So 3 Super Cups away from being a double sextuple winner. Yeah, for me, he's. It's hard to say that he's totally eclipsed Ferguson in respect of the manager conversation, but genuinely, if you had to really think about it, for me, I think all Ferguson really has on Guardiola now is longevity. That's always going to be something that Pep can't really compete against unless he keeps managing for another 20 years or so. But I think I'm comfortable in saying Pep's the greatest manager ever as well, just by virtue of what he's achieved already. And it's in relative terms, he's not been in management that long. So when was it? 2008, his first job at Barca B, was it? So that's 15 years. That's really not that long in management at all. How long did Fergie manage United for? Was it 30 or so years? Something like that. So by the end of his career, everyone will agree he's the greatest manager ever. I think I'm comfortable in saying that he is the greatest manager ever now. It's just staggering what he's achieved. People can cry about the money he spent. Literally everyone spends money. Fergie broke the British transfer record 5 times, so we're not going to be having any of this. Oh, you can't do it without money. Literally, if you want sustained, continued success year on year, you have to spend money, funnily enough. It doesn't matter what era you're in. It doesn't matter if it's 1910, it doesn't matter if it's 1999, it doesn't matter if it's 2023. You want to win, you better be willing to spend money on wages and transfer fees. So that's just a dead argument for me. There's always, and there has indeed been, question marks over whose treble was better, whose treble was harder, United's or City's. First of all, I think it's a really weird argument. People were trying to belittle City's treble before it had even been won. Really weird thing there. I think we're going to go into more depth on this in the podcast with Gasky. We both agree that it's a redundant argument, but if you had to argue it, I would personally argue that City's is better because United only won the league by 1 point that season. They got 79 points, and in the Champions League they finished second in their group, so they didn't even beat Bayern or Barca in the group stages. They faced Juve and Inter in the knockouts. I think they beat them by 1 goal, and Juve and Inter finished 7th and 8th in Serie A that season. So I don't know where that comes from, by the way. Like Gary Neville, whenever he's talking about the United treble winning side, he keeps saying, "Oh yeah, Juve, the greatest side in Europe that year." They finished 7th in their own league, so I don't really know what you're talking about. And like Zidane was struggling with injuries that season, so I don't really know. I don't know. And then in the final, they got 2 corner goals and they were outplayed for the whole match, whereas City just weren't. And we've battered, so we've like battered Bayern Munich and Real Madrid on our way to win the final. And also in the FA Cup final, we beat United in the final, who actually would have had the chance to stop the treble from happening, but they didn't. So if you want to have that silly argument of which is the better treble, whatever, for me it's this City one, but that's something we'll go into explore more on the podcast with Gasky, as I say. City have won the treble, and no one can take that away from us. But the financial charges, if you really think that City are going to be found guilty for those financial breaches, first of all, go watch my video on it. But if you really think that, then you actually don't know what you're talking about, and you are just embarrassing yourself. If you know anything about the case that's coming up, then you'll know that there is no case, and it's going to be really funny when City get found like not guilty, because there's like no evidence at all of any wrongdoing. It's going to be really funny. So yeah, no one can take it away from us. We'll never sing that. Champions of Europe, we'll never sing that. What are Villa fans and like Forest fans going to chant at us now? I don't even know. I guess now the conversation becomes, because it's always the next thing. It's always like, yeah, but you haven't done this. Yeah, but you haven't done that. Yeah, but you haven't done that. But now we have done the treble and won the Champions League. So I think the next thing is going to be, yeah, but you've only won 1. So I'm guessing, which I'm fine with that, because I just wanted to win the 1. And just on that, maybe like the last thing, I've constantly championed the idea that this is me personally, I'm not saying that it is objectively better, I'm just saying my own personal feelings. I've always, well, a bit of it's objective, I've always said that the best team always wins the Premier League, doesn't necessarily win the Champions League. That's still true. I've always championed that I'd rather win the Premier League than the Champions League. I've always championed that the Premier League is a better indicator of quality than the Champions League. That the Champions League isn't the be-all and end-all of club size. And loads of people, mainly Liverpool fans, like United fans, saying, well, you're only saying that because you've never won it before. If you won the Champions League, you think differently. Well, I'm so happy that I can look those people in the eye and tell you, right, well, we've won Champions League now. My team's won the Champions League now. And guess what? I still think the exact same. I would still much rather win the Premier League than the Champions League. I still think it has higher weight than the Champions League. These are my feelings. I'm sorry if that's disappointed you, but yeah, funnily enough, my opinion didn't change, even when we won it. Weird. But there we go. I was going to say something wise then, and I can't remember what it was. I remembered what I was going to say, just on the thing of like Champions League isn't the be-all and end-all of club size. Still 100% maintain that, by the way. But when I did my club size video, City versus Chelsea, like just before we lost our Champions League final against them, actually, my one thing was, I think most people actually argue City are a bigger club than Chelsea. But my point then was, I'll only say it once we win the Champions League, because that's currently the only thing Chelsea really have on us. We beat them in every single metric. So we're now, in my opinion, a bigger club than Chelsea. I think most people's opinion as well. I think we've won the same amount of trophies as them as well. The quality of our trophies is a lot better as well. Like they've won like more cups. We've won like I think 50% more league titles, for example. Something like that. So Arsenal, you're coming next. But yeah, like if City keep going as they are doing, there's no reason why we can't be a bigger club than Arsenal, in like 10 years time or something like that. There's no reason why not. But yeah, what a perfect ending to the season. We've won the treble. It still hasn't really properly processed. It's insane. yeah, this has been a mental experience. I'll talk about this more like on like my streams and think, but UEFA, your organisation, embarrassing and appalling. No wonder City fans boo you, because it was shite. It was absolutely shite. I didn't get back until like 5 in the morning because of how terribly organised the coaches were getting back from the stadium. But yeah, that's a wrap for another day. Happy time now. So I tell you, it's a good thing we won, otherwise I would have been popping off just based on the organisation. But yeah, City have won the treble. We are the best team in the world. Pep's City is the greatest Premier League side we've ever seen. It's Pep City is up there. I don't think it's as good, but it is up there with Pep's Barcelona side as well. Like it is genuinely in the highest tier of football sides in history. That is how good it is in club football sides. It's up there with Pep's Barca for sure. I don't know where I'd rank it exactly. I'd certainly rank it over Zidane's Real Madrid side. I don't care. They won 3 in a row. I don't care. That side won like 1 league title. It's got to be up there. But guys, I've been rambling. That's the video. Thank you so much for watching. More videos to come. I'm sure more podcasts and live streams to come. I'm going to go eat some Turkish pizza. I don't know what it's called. Lakmakan? I don't know. I'm going to go find out how to pronounce it. Goodbye, guys.